Hi everybody, this is Sufia and it is week 65. Today's Monday and we're talking about intersecting identities this week. So what I want to talk about with this topic is looking at the different facets of identity, specifically my identity and how they intersect and how they've played into my relationship with a trans person. And I think that this is something that I'm really working on right now, really looking at in a personal way, because of who I am and also because our lives are changing so much right now. If you've watched any of my past videos, you might know that we are currently traveling across the U.S. We lived in Asheville, North Carolina, and are moving to Albuquerque, New Mexico, but doing it over the course of a couple months. So yeah, it's taking us a little while to get there. We're adventuring and staying with family and friends along the way. So I'm really getting a chance to look at myself and our relationship in different contexts, which is a really cool thing. And I also think this is a really important topic to talk about because every single one of us has different facets that make up our identity and then inform our experiences in this world. So some of the ones that immediately come to mind are race, ethnicity, nationality, ability, those kind of things. But there's also the not so obvious ones, like your identity as a sibling, if you're a sister, or if you're a mother, or if you work in a coffee shop and you're a barista. That's an identity. If you're right-handed. So, you know, your experience as a right-handed vegetarian from New Hampshire is going to be very different than, you know, a differently abled person who might be an only child living in California. You know, every one of us has different experiences in this world because of who we are. And so what I really want to do and what I'm really trying to do in my own life is illuminate the fact that there is no normal when it comes to identity, that there might be dominant identities, dominant facets. So in the U.S., for instance, you know, being a white, straight male is definitely a dominant identity, but that doesn't mean that it's normal. It's not my normal. And so I want to talk about that in the context of partners because there's also no normal when it comes to being the partner of a trans person. And that's because every single one of us is different. So to talk a little bit about my identities, some of my identities, I was born in Lafayette, Louisiana, and lived there for a while as a child and then moved to Asheville, North Carolina. So the mountains, a small mountain town in North Carolina that is pretty progressive and sustainability minded, and it's like a little blue bubble in a red state, but is still very much situated in the South and feels that way in a lot of ways. My sense of self is really based on being Cajun. My family's Cajun. My mom and her brother and her generation speaks French, and my grandparents only spoke French. They learned English later. So my sense of self really came to be in a Cajun background with family members who are very Catholic and very much pride themselves on cooking a big gumbo and having everybody over to eat, and that's what normal is there. So that's been my sense of home, and then we moved to North Carolina, and it took a long time for me to understand that that I'm brown. So my mom's Cajun and my father's Pakistani, and that has really been mediated by the fact that my father is someone who immigrated to this country and very much wanted to be of this country, and so he spent a long time working on his English to kind of anglicize his accent, and when I was young, he didn't practice Islam, so my experience of him as a Pakistani person was not really Pakistani. I didn't really understand he was Pakistani, and therefore did not understand that I was either. So I spent a long time trying to understand that as an older person. And as I grew older, and especially after 9/11, other people started to recognize me as different. And that's when I started to look into it, and especially through college, really did a lot of identity work, and have kind of come to understand myself as a brown woman because the world sees me that way. And I understand myself as a Cajun woman because that's my life experience. So all of that is to say that I didn't really fit in anywhere. I didn't have a place where I was fully accepted, because with my mom's family I was still my father's daughter. I was still, I looked different, you know, and in dominant white culture I didn't really fit in there either, because I am brown and my name is Sufia, you know, I have a different name, different sounding name, that kind of thing. So I didn't really fit anywhere, and so this is really, really pertinent to my relationship with my partner Mel, because when we first met, Mel identified as genderqueer, and as Mel is transitioning, still really feels comfortable with that term and uses gender-neutral pronouns, and we both really connect on the fact that neither one of us feels like we have a home, that we feel completely a part of one thing or another thing. We very much ride boundaries and borders, and so I would say that that part of who I am has really come into play with my relationship with Mel, being a trans person. So another part of my identity is being from the South, and that's something that I'm really starting to look at more and more, and I'm excited to look at that more and more, and like as I said, as we travel, that's coming up in a bigger way. So when I first learned about the South, I learned about it as home, because that's the only thing I knew. And so from the beginning of my life, the South has meant warm weather and live oak trees and cypress trees and biscuits and grandparents and family time and all these warm, fuzzy things. And then as I got a little older and I learned about the history of the South, it came to mean racism and prejudice and shame and guilt and pain, and also so much potential for healing and room for healing. And starting to see myself in that process of myself as having a place in helping to heal my relationship with the South, as well as many other people's relationship with the South. And then as I started to explore my own brown identity and came out as queer in the South, it came to mean hard conversations, which could be a negative thing, but really backed up by community, which is a positive thing. And it's, to me, the South is a place where racism is talked about and it's recognized in certain ways, whereas I've experienced in other places, you know, there might be a tendency to pretend it doesn't exist. And so there's I think in the South it's harder to pretend that we live in a post-racial society. So obviously I have a very deep and complicated love for the South, and very, it's a very complicated relationship with the South. And it's where I'm from, it's part of who I am. And it's also very much a part of my relationship with Mel, because Mel is also from the South and has a very Southern family from the Piedmont of North Carolina, and you know, that's kind of played out in different ways, where whenever we've left Asheville in the past, and that's continuing now, we kind of have this unspoken understanding that it may not be safe to hold hands in public walking down the street, so we automatically do that less, or we are kind of on the lookout for each other. Our radar is up a little bit more just walking around in the South, because sometimes it's necessary. It isn't always safe for queer folks or trans folks. And you know, on this road trip, I have noticed myself being very aware of when Mel walks into the men's restroom at a gas station somewhere in the middle of nowhere. I'm just very aware of how long Mel's in there, and if any other people walk in or walk out, or, you know, little things like that that are not easy. They're hard to confront, and they also are very much a part of who Mel and I are, and a part of our relationship. So I don't really have a whole lot of examined thought around that right now. It's just something that I'm experiencing right now and we're kind of working with. But it's very much a part of how who we are interacts with us being in a relationship and Mel being trans. And I'd also say that our Southern families, again, this isn't fully examined because this is something that's happening right now, but I've noticed our families talking about Mel being trans in a particular way. So with Mel's family, there are short careful conversations, kind of asking, checking in on, well, how are things going? You okay? Okay. And that's that. And maybe I want to kind of, I'm not going to unpack this. I'm not going to problematize it. I'm not going to really try to open it up because I'm going to let it be complicated. But I'm sensing conversations that are much shorter and just kind of, we don't want to talk about it too much is what it feels like. So I've noticed that with my family as well. And, you know, there's been a really great reception to Mel because they're just a wonderful person. And so it's hard to not like Mel. But I've been thinking a lot about Mel's identity as a white trans person in the South, and particularly with my family. I really wonder with certain members of my family how it would be. They're very accepting of Mel. Well, they're relatively accepting of Mel. They like Mel. They don't talk about Mel being trans, and that's that. They leave it at that. But I wonder if Mel were a black person, especially black and trans, how that would go. I have a sense that would not go so well. And so that's something I'm currently working with, and again, super problematic. I'm not opening it up. I'm not unpacking it right now. It just is what it is. I'm kind of working at it right now. But it is a part of our experience right now. So I'm going to keep working with that. If anyone has any questions or comments or wants to talk about this at all with me, I very much am a verbal processor, and I also like kind of trying to tease these things out, so that's what I'm doing, and I would love to do that with you. Feel free to comment or send me a message on Facebook if you'd like, and I hope you guys all have a great week. All right, take care.